Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Sands. Welcome to the Food Origins podcast. I'll be talking to people about their unique stories with food. And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support. And thanks for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Food Origins podcast. Today, my guest is Tracy Desmond. She's the owner of Cruz Kombucha, based in the Bay Area, out of Santa Cruz, California. Tracy has paired her background in the hospitality industry and experience building and scaling several large organizations to develop a unique approach to creating and operating a functional health beverage business. Tracy talks to us about starting her own business, process of making kombucha, what it is, the health benefits, tools of the trade, different flavor profiles, local businesses, and her favorite restaurants. And of course, definitely go try some kombucha. Thanks to the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce for their hospitality and allowing us to record this podcast on location in Mountain View. Appreciate you guys listening. Enjoy the show. All right, we're rolling. Thank you. I'm here with Tracy Desmond of Cruz Kombucha, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dave, for having me.
Yeah. Let's just jump right into it. Why don't you tell us where you're from and all that good stuff, where you grew up and everything?
Sure. So I am from Peoria, Illinois. It's a small town in the Midwest. Population is probably about 110, 115,000 people. Born and raised there. And Peoria is home of Caterpillar. So Caterpillar was headquartered there for about 100 years. And it also was during Prohibition, was a big spot for bootlegging. And prior to that, with a lot of whiskey distilleries. So born and raised there, moved away when I was 18, moved west, first to Arizona and then out to California, and have been out here most of that time.
Awesome. And obviously this is about food, but what did you eat growing up?
I would say very, Midwestern fare, meat and potatoes. We lived near cornfields, so we had this really amazing corn on the cob, barbecues with the family, picnics, things like that. Our family, my grandparents lived on a lake, and they would go fishing. And every year, our grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, we would go on an annual summertime fishing trip as well, camping and fishing and things like that. And so we'd, fish and then fry up the fish in batter and eat that. So I've got lots of memories about that, but mostly just, kind of meat and potatoes kind of a place. That's kind of
good old American fare.
That's right.
And then is it trout? Would you guys catch trout mostly?
I think
Do you remember?
It was bass.
Bass, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I remember.
All right. And then Caterpillar, you're referring to the big construction equipment guys, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
They were there. They still have a pretty big presence there, but they were headquarters, and they were there for about 100 years with headquarters, and we're a big employer back in Peoria.
Is there like I've never been to Illinois. Is there like a popular food that everyone, like if you tell somebody to visit there, is there something they should try? Or is it kind of
Chicago pizza, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Chicago
if you go to
pizza,
Chicago, yeah,
for sure. And then like I said, corn on the cob, it's like no other corn on the cob. So in the summertime, it's just super sweet, and you don't need anything on it. And that's definitely a popular food there in the summertime.
Yeah. And then you said you went to Arizona and then out to California. So why don't you bring us to speed? What'd you do? Because you didn't get into hospitality right away. Why don't you tell us how you ended up, getting to where you're at? We'll get into your business in a little bit. But
sure. Actually, I did start. I started in hospitality.
Okay.
So my very first job was at a place in Peoria called Cater In. I think I was 15. And we did food prep for catering events, weddings, award ceremonies and things like that. So it was my very first job.
Nice.
And then we actually did the service too. So you'd work in the kitchen and do the food prep, and then you'd change into black pants and a white shirt and put on an apron and go do the services, both at the location and then also at, different event places around. So that was my first job. And I was in the hospitality industry for well over 10 years, mostly in hotels and resorts. So I was in hospitality, working the front desk at hotels, working different functions throughout hotels and resorts. Then I left for a while, for quite a long time, until kind of coming back into the kitchen not too long ago.
Okay. And then I understand you got a BS from Purdue, right?
I do.
What's that from?
Yeah.
What'd you study there?
So I first started in Arizona. I went to school and I thought I was going to be a journalist. So I went to the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, but pretty quickly decided that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And that's when I started to get into, hospitality and nutrition and, potentially being a dietitian and just really exploring more of the hospitality side. At one point back then, I wanted to work at Club Med. That looked really cool. Like I could go and, travel and, work at resorts and learn different languages and travel the world. So yeah, I went to Purdue, or I ended up graduating from Purdue and, was in different hotel and hospitality jobs, for the next 10, 15, probably 20 years, both front of the house and back of the house. Moved out when I came to California. I moved into tech, and have been in tech for a while, and then came back with opening the business. Yeah,
and then are there any spots you want to highlight that impacted you in the hospitality, world that you enjoyed? I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, interacting with guests and customers in different roles that I was in. And then one of the things that I loved about sort of the big hotels and the big resorts was, it's like a little city there. Some of I worked in Scottsdale, Arizona at a big resort out there. And it's like a whole underground city where you've got restaurants and you've got, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 employees working in some of these places. So it's like you've got sort of like, what you see above ground and then all the
and what's behind the scenes.
To make it happen below ground. So I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, like just even the hotel in general, like people don't realize you see the front desk person and maybe a couple other people and the people that help you with stuff, and then that's it. But then behind closed doors, there's the entire staff of cleaning and the towel, like how you get your towels and, spa service, the restaurants. That's like 500 people back there.
That's right. And it's like a maze, some of these places. And I've never worked at those giant hotels in Vegas, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, I haven't either. I just mostly restaurants and stuff. I have friends that worked at hotels, but yeah, even just seeing the restaurant scene in general, people don't realize if it's not an open area, open kitchen style. Yeah. You're seeing everything's in the back and they don't get to see all the busy bees back there working.
Right, just a fraction of what's actually happening.
Yeah, for sure. And then you came out to California, and then what'd you do? You've been working in tech. What kind of tech business were you at?
I've been at a couple
all
of
over.
Yeah.
You've been all over. I know.
A couple of different companies.
Long resume.
That's right. A couple of different companies. I'm more in the kind of operation side of that world. So.
And then let's get into it. What brought you back?
So specifically related to kombucha, I made kombucha at home for myself. Would try. I'm a green tea drinker. I've never had a cup of coffee, which most people, that's hard to believe, but I've never had a cup of coffee. But I love green tea. I love tea, and so at home I experiment with different teas and definitely different green teas and white teas. And I started making kombucha for myself, and I didn't even flavor it back then. It would just mostly be the tea that I was using for the flavoring. I wouldn't add anything like the flavors that I brought here today. And, made it myself. And, I didn't give it to anybody. I wasn't selling it. I would just make half a gallon or a gallon at a time. And I'd put it in little, just little jars and put it in the fridge and have, 4, 6, 8 ounces a day just for myself. And then one year I was out visiting my cousin who lives on Maui, and she lives kind of up country at kind of on the way to Road to Hana, if you've ever been there.
Yes.
And there is this kombucha bar called Maui Kombucha up in Haiku.
Okay.
And it's not in a toury place. It's more where the locals
like farmland,
go.
Right.
Right. And it's, I think open 10 to 3. And so she's lived there for over 20 years. And so she knows all the local spots and always takes us to the best places.
Nice.
And, hikes and waterfalls, but also, kind of where the locals hang out. So she told me about this place, and it's a raw food bar and kombucha bar. And it's been around for, I think, 15, 18 years. It's been around a long time before, like, tap rooms are popular now, but this had been there for a really long time.
Okay.
So I went to this place, and I love the kombucha. I love the food. One of the things I didn't mention about Illinois and a meat and potatoes fare there is when I was about 15, I became a vegetarian, and I've been vegetarian ever since. And so one of the things I loved about Maui Kombucha is they had this amazing food, raw food bar. You could either order right from the counter, or they had, cold case that you could do grab and go. Loved the food, loved the kombucha. They had probably 10 plus flavors on tap. But what I really loved was the vibe of Maui Kombucha. I just thought I loved it. I loved, seeing the locals come every single day. And we ended up going every time I go now. I'm there at least once a day, but sometimes we actually go twice a day. It's that good. Like, it's that compelling.
Yeah.
Get to know the locals, have conversations with people. You start to see the same people day in and day out. People who are local just bring their big growlers and they just fill it up. And it's kind of like, it's not a bar, like a nighttime bar, but it's like a bar where people come and hang out.
Hang out and chill. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I fell in love with this place, and I just, I didn't want to leave. I liked it that much. And so
Maui does that.
yeah, for sure. And I just could not get Maui Kombucha out of my head. And I was like, could I open one of where would we open one that you could have this type of feeling of community and connection, and the kombucha and the food. And so, I was like, could you do it in Half Moon Bay? Could you do it in Santa Cruz? Could you do it, different, places that we have here in the Bay Area? And at one point I even started to go look for space. I would check out these little nooks and these little places, could you do it there? Could you do it there? And then the pandemic hit. So I, moving forward with a kombucha bar or anything like that, or a kombucha business, was not top of mind for a little while there.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, I put it on the back burner, didn't really think about it for a little bit, and then started to think about it again as things calmed down a bit from the pandemic. And I started to go to farmers markets, and we're actually in Mountain View right now. And the farmers market here in Mountain View, there was a woman who sold kombucha on tap. It was called Almighty Kombucha. And I'd get kombucha from her. And then every time I'd go there, I'd start to talk to her, and I'd ask her questions about her business and kind of how she got to where she was and how many gallons she brewed and how she went from brewing in her kitchen to brewing and having this commercial business that she had. And she was awesome with her time and her knowledge. And, one time I took her, we went and had, coffee or tea, and I just had this notebook, and I just took tons and tons of notes about whatever she said. And most of it, I had no idea what she was talking about or the equipment she was referring to, but I just took a lot of notes. I started to read everything I could about commercial, making kombucha at a commercial scale. I took a kombucha master class. I just read and read and read and read and read, and started to really think about, could I make a business out of this, and what would it be? And that maybe, not having a storefront is probably, you wouldn't want to necessarily jump into that, but, how could I sell this at maybe markets or kind of at a smaller scale? Mm-hmm. So at one point, Jen, this woman, sends me a message, and she says, "Are you still thinking about starting a kombucha business?" And I said, yeah, it's in the back of my mind, something that I want to do at some point, but it wasn't a tomorrow type of thing. And she said, "I'm thinking about exiting my business. Is there anything that you would want to know, or any equipment you'd want to purchase or anything like that?" And she's like, "Do you want to come down and see my fermenters so you can kind of see that side of it?" Because, I could see what she was doing at the markets, but to see sort of the behind the scenes things. Around the same time, there's House Kombucha, which is in the East Bay. Now they're at Jack London Square, but before that, they were doing tours of their facility, and she's been around a long time, and so she's got big, fermenters and a pretty big production facility. So I went and took a tour of that. It was open to the public. She was doing those for a while. So I kind of saw that scale, and that seemed too big to get from point A to point B with that one. But
Right.
went down and saw Jen's fermenters, and I was like, I could do this. It was at a scale that I felt like I could do. And so that really helped sort of accelerate, me really making the decision to go do this. So, I started to apply for permits. So I had to apply for, state of California permitting. We had to do the different county permittings. I started to apply for farmers markets. I just started to really build out the business. I moved into a commercial kitchen, first a smaller one, but pretty quickly could tell that I was going to outgrow that one. And so I moved into a different commercial kitchen and started trying different flavors and, really trying to build out from going from 1 gallon to, 5 gallon to 25 gallon to 50 gallon to 80 gallon, and the different things that you have to do when you're, moving into a different scale.
Wow. And shout out to Mountain View Chamber of Commerce. They were on location here, letting us borrow their space. And then are you based, so hence the name Cruz Kombucha, are you based in Santa Cruz, or you're kind of all over, right?
We're all over. The commercial kitchen is actually in San Jose. I wanted to have the space in Santa Cruz because I think it would be a great match for that. But I sort of started to launch the business and worked on the name and the logo and trademarking and all that kind of thing. And then it was really difficult to get the amount of commercial kitchen space that I need for the fermenters, because unlike, a caterer or a baker where you're sort of like packing in, packing out, like I've got big ferment, it takes a decent amount of space and temperature and things like that. So we actually brew in San Jose. We're in Santa Cruz farmers markets. We're in the Los Altos farmers markets, and then we're getting ready to apply for next year.
Yeah, we'll get into, I got a list of some of the places you're in. Let's get into kombucha. Why don't you tell us, for people that don't know, for the listeners, some listeners probably have never had it. I've had plenty of it. I've gotten to taste some of them, and they were awesome. And, what is kombucha, some of the benefits, and then, you can kind of get into how it's made. And like I told you, Tracy, you don't have to give up any of your trade secrets, but, tell us what it's all about and why it's good for you.
Sure. So kombucha is a fermented tea drink. So we start with, different types of tea. Some brands and home brewers and commercial brewers use a black tea. Some use green, some use white, some use a mix. So you start with you start with tea, and you go through the fermentation process depending on the size of your vessel and the temperature and things like that. It can take anywhere from 7 to 10 days. And some of our bigger fermenters, it's closer to 30 days for our operation. And once it's at a particular pH, acidity, and then also just you sort of also go off of taste, some of its measurements and some of its taste. Okay. When it's just at that, right sort of balance of pH below a certain level, and then also that balance between like sort of tart and sweet, just that sweet spot, then you can either serve it plain, then it's just a plain kombucha, or you can flavor it. And so for all of our flavors, we use all local produce. So whatever is in season is what we're going to flavor with. So right now, we've got a pomegranate, I've got mandarin. In the summertime, we had berries. Parts, sometimes of the year we're going to have citrus. So just really
and
depends.
You have like strawberry too. You do. Yeah, whenever that's in season. Yeah, it's nice. Yep. And so from when you start to make it to when it's finished, how long is that process? Let's say you're on your scale, how long is that taking?
Yeah, so for our scale, 2 to 3 weeks most of the year. This time of year when it's colder, it is going to take a little bit. I heat the room so it's at a particular temperature. In the summer months, it's really consistent, just, time-wise, but I would say 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
About 2 weeks for the ferment. We flavor somewhere between 3 to 5 days for most of the flavors, and then you keg it, and then we keep it in refrigeration in the kegs, and that can stay for quite a while.
Nice. And then why don't you tell us what a SCOBY is, and I want to know, like, at what point does that form, and how's that all come about in the process?
Sure. So SCOBY is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. Yep. And it is, gelatinous sort of cellulose feel to it. And, you start when you're brewing kombucha, you're always going to have one of those. You're going to have some starter, so some previous kombucha, and then a SCOBY. and then it will create its own SCOBY. It starts to form after about 24 to 48 hours, and then you'll see it get thicker and thicker. I have some pictures of SCOBY sort of at different stages. And, I'm a little bit geeky in the kombucha and the SCOBYs. Like the other night, I had a really just beautiful SCOBY in the 80-gallon fermenter that had formed, and it was just like that perfect kind of thickness, and the way it looked was great.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's not. It doesn't look like. It almost looks like a styrofoam disc, almost, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's it's kind of like a whitish color, more like a creamish color, and depending on this, it takes the shape of your vessel. So if you've got a gallon, it's going to take the shape of like the circle gallon container. In a 5-gallon, it's going to be that size. In a 30-gallon or 50-gallon or 80-gallon, it's going to be the size of the top of the container.
Nice. And then we can get into, kind of what's in there. A lot of questions come up when people have kombucha. They're like, does it have a lot of sugar? Is it, caffeinated? We'll name that big brand. They've got dark bottles that's got, higher traces of alcohol. And why don't you tell us about, the different types and what your style is too?
Sure. So we do testing ourselves. So we have different, and I brought a few of the some of the equipment that we use to test. So we test our sugar levels, we test the pH, of course, we test alcohol levels, but that's sort of our own measurement. And then a certain number of times a year, we also send it out for lab testing externally so that they can, give our results back. And we've got sort of that external measure as well. On the sugar content, all of our base kombucha is under 3 grams of sucrose per 8 ounces. So it's actually quite low. And in terms of caffeine, it's our kombucha is around 11 milligrams of caffeine for 8 ounces. So, lower than green tea, lower than white tea. So pretty low. So people can drink it, even that are sensitive to caffeine. Kiddos can drink it. People who don't like caffeine can drink it even in the evenings, and they've reported like they weren't affected by it at all. So, and then on the alcohol content, that's obviously a biggie. In the United States, we have to keep it under a certain level to avoid the hard kombucha or the alcohol tax associated with that. So we're always testing for that. There is legislation underway and a petition to increase that to be more consistent with other countries. But for right now, it's pretty low, and that level has been around since Prohibition.
Okay.
So I was talking about the distilleries in Illinois and Prohibition. It makes me laugh sometimes that, I'm dealing with a product that kind of traces back to those times as well in Prohibition.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then you've got looks like a Milwaukee tool. Why don't you explain that too? I know folks can't see it. I will take some photos of it, but tell us what that does.
Sure. So this is the one that I use to test the pH. So it's a pH meter. And so I use this all the time.
Yeah.
Joking, I'd never used one of these until I started
Yeah,
business.
and Tracy's got it's like an electronic meter with a probe in it. Yeah.
That's right. So when I am brewing the kombucha, we talked about the fermenting, and you asked how long it takes.
Yeah.
So I will, test it, take a little cup and we test it. And then I'm checking here to make sure that it's at a particular level. I'll then taste the kombucha and see if it's, at the right level that we want to pull it off to do the flavoring.
Nice. And then you've got a couple other tools. I think a microplane.
Yeah, this is really just, I know sometimes you ask your guests about favorite things.
Yeah.
This is really a minor thing, but it is I used it for the zesting. And a lot of zesters are more narrow or they're a little bit different, but I love this one because it's a little bit thicker and it kind of saves my hand when I'm doing the zesting.
Yeah, so she's got the nice wide microplane. Very nice. And then a small mortar and pestle, right?
That's right. So for ginger, for turmeric, because we use fresh ginger and we use fresh turmeric, so I love using that to kind of get those aromas and those flavors out of the ginger and turmeric. That's primarily what I use that for. Other things I use is a beer gun when I'm filling the bottles. So just things that I had never used before.
That's cool. I have a couple friends that make kombucha at home themselves. One of them wanted me to ask you, how does you get the effervescence that's in there, which is kind of that bubbly? Is it just, obviously it's through the process, but like, how do you know, you have enough, and where's that coming from?
Yeah, this is another one of those things where I feel a little bit like a kombucha geek because sometimes when I'm at the kitchen and I'll, pull back the top of the fermenter, like the other day, I just had this really beautiful SCOBY and I was like, loving it. Same thing is true for the bubbles. Sometimes I'll do the flavoring in the kegs or even I'll just move it into kegs. Couple different ways I do flavoring. Some is in the fermenters and some is in the kegs. And I'll take the lid off and you just see like the beautiful bubbles. And it's just like, it's part of the process. But sometimes they're just like really perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and I got to taste some of yours today. I tasted the pomegranate, right?
Right. Pomegranate mint. We have a lemon, lime, ginger, and
I tasted the Iconic too.
Iconic Cruz, which is ginger, turmeric, orange. That's a popular one. We've got that on tap at a couple of our commercial locations.
Yeah, I mean, I love those three. Those three put together is awesome. And why don't you tell us, we'll get into some of your flavors and we'll go through them all, but why don't you tell us the benefits of kombucha? Why do you think people should be drinking it?
Sure. So starting with the green tea, there's antioxidants.
And that's what you use, yeah. So Tracy uses green tea and some of the other popular ones use black tea, right?
That's right. That's right. Thanks for that. We use green tea in ours, so the antioxidant properties for that. And then kombucha, through the process that it goes through, certainly helps with digestion. And so from a liver health perspective, from a gut health perspective, immunity, there's a variety of different things. There's B vitamins in it. And so, I don't know that everybody can feel it, but I know a lot of people report, and I know I feel it as well. Like when you drink it, some of it's, there's trace amounts of alcohol. You've got a little bit of caffeine, but you can really feel, how it makes you feel in terms of, gut health and just, skin, hair, all the different things that it does from a benefits perspective.
What do you think the right time is to drink it? Like, do you drink it? Tell us when's a good time to drink it.
Yeah, I think for some people, there's recommendations like first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, to have, 2, 4, 6 ounces. I don't drink it so much in the morning. I'll drink a regular warm tea in the morning. I like something like that in the morning. Mm-hmm. And then for me, I'll drink it in the afternoon. So, I'm working or doing whatever and, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll have some. It also depends on the flavor profile of it. We've got some sweeter ones. Like today I've got a mandarin vanilla, and it tastes like a dreamsicle. So I probably wouldn't have that one first thing in the morning. I'd have that one later in the day. We've got Scarborough Fair, which is parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. That one would be more in the morning. I could see drinking that one. So it's really just whenever you're feeling like it, or when you might reach for something else, like a cup of coffee or something else like that. That's a good.
And do you think it's good more on an empty stomach rather than like with a meal?
They do recommend just, that you drink it on an empty stomach, but you don't have to. And I know tons of people will drink it while studying, or they'll drink it with a meal. And we certainly have it on tap at so many places. And the idea is rather than, a soda or, again, coffee or something else, you'll just drink it at that same time. Okay.
Nice. And then we can get into some of your flavors. You got quite a lot here and some really cool names. You got Coastal Zest. That one?
Coastal Zest was one of the first flavors I came up with. So in that very first commercial kitchen, when, I'm moving out of my own kitchen and a gallon at a time and, moving into those bigger volume amounts, that was the first one that I did. And so it's blood orange, grapefruit, and lemon zest. So this is where the zester comes in handy. Mm-hmm. So I do a little bit of zesting, and then I dice up the blood orange and let that ferment for a couple of days in the flavor, leave that for 3 to 5 days, and then it's ready to go.
Really nice. And then I tasted the Iconic Cruz. Really good. And it's ginger, turmeric,
and orange.
Yep.
And we use fresh ginger and turmeric, and then a little bit of powdered turmeric. And I love the color of that one. It's kind of that golden. You can see it over there. It's kind of that golden turmeric-y color.
Yeah, and to kind of describe it to some people, like, it's going to be a little bit pungent from the ginger, but I mean, the orange kind of mellows it out a little bit.
Yeah, it's fun at the farmers markets because I get to listen, people will try our flavors and get their feedback. And so, you've got ginger lovers who just want you to just dial it up. Right. And they'll say, add more ginger to various flavors. And then you've got other people that are a little more hesitant about ginger. So it's funny to get that feedback.
Yeah. Pinnacle Pear.
Pinnacle Pear is pear and grape. That's one, again, some of the flavors, go with the season. So whatever's locally available. So in the summertime, we had a lot of different berry flavors. A very popular one is our raspberry ginger. We do a mixed berry, which is, strawberry, blueberry, blackberry, raspberry. This time of year, we're doing pear, grape. So that one has, local pears and grapes in it.
Nice. And then, kind of some of the other ones. You got the Citrus Tide, Summit Strawberry, Maverick Melon, Redwood Raspberry?
That's right.
And Strawberry Fields.
Yep. And I see one of your notes is Mycologic.
Yes.
So that one
I wanted you to kind of talk about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one is, we use 3 different mushrooms. It's chaga, reishi, and lion's mane. So again, great for immunity and some other healing and just health properties. And then sage, organic sage. And that's actually from my own garden. And that one, when you read the ingredients, some people know right away, like at the markets and some of our other places, they know right away because they're mushroom lovers. And they know the healing properties of mushrooms. And so they'll say right away, I want to order, Mycologic. And then you have other people who are like, oh, I wouldn't like that one. Or, I don't think I would like that one. And we always have them taste it. And without fail, every single person has loved it and has said, that's not what I expected it to taste like. So I think they think it's going to be brothy, like almost like a vegetable broth.
Yeah, I think they're thinking of like the cooked mushroom or something, or mushroom soup or something.
That's right.
Totally not it.
Not like that at all. And so, the flavor of the tea that we use comes out, and then the sage and the mushrooms, and it's a really popular one. And it's probably one I drink the most of. It's one of the top 2 that I probably drink the most of.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then there's a couple other things, but like getting into, kind of the business thing, I kind of wanted to ask you, because you have a small business, like what was it like opening your own small business, and would you recommend it? Obviously yes, because you're doing fine, but like it's a tall task. I'm in the same boat. I'm starting this podcast out of nothing, from scratch, and it's a leap, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
It is. I mean, it's definitely a leap. And, on the one hand, you make all the decisions and it's all up to you. But on the other hand, you make all the decisions and it's all up to you. So it's a balance there. But I think when you're doing something that you really love and you're really interested in, the time that I spend in the kitchen, it goes by so fast. And, the kitchen doesn't have windows. So, 8 hours can go by sometimes at the kitchen, and just like the level of creativity. And I think with like an artisan, type brew that we're doing, the creativity and the flavor combinations and the interacting with the community and things like that. I love it so much. The time goes by fast. There's nights where I am tired for sure. Just from, we're moving 50-gallon kegs and, 50-pound kegs, 5-gallon kegs around. So definitely tired at times, but I think when you're doing something you love, like you're just really inspired and motivated to keep it going.
It's so true. And then, would you recommend it?
I would. I mean, I think, if you can do it, if there's a way that you can do it, if you have the resources or, just that availability and time to be able to do it, I say do it, like, because you'll always wonder about it. And even if you do it for a year or 2 years or 5 years or 6 months or whatever, and maybe it's even at a different scale, like, I wanted to open a kombucha bar, but I'm not doing that, but I have a kombucha business and a kombucha brand. And so, you may have to go a different route or a different angle, or it might be at a slightly different scale or vision than you originally planned. But I think doing some piece of it, and then you can always build and scale that over time. Nice.
And then is there, I think what I wanted to tell you was like you're also doing like, your sustainability practices are really good, and going into that, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, super important to us, from a waste perspective. So we try to be, reduce and, no, and I won't say as far as no waste, but limited waste, low waste. We also do bottle refills. So if people either bring our bottles back, or if they've got their own bottles, that they want to fill up. So we do bottle discounts and bottle credits. So, at the markets and at different places, and individual customers that we have on the website, we'll do bottle exchanges, and then they get a credit, so we can just keep those bottles being recycled and reused. Nice.
Is there anything about kombucha that you think we haven't gone over, as something that we don't know about, that we should know about?
I would say, some people, you mentioned this earlier, have never had kombucha, and I think it's worth trying. Not everyone's going to be a convert. I think sometimes people try a particular brand or a particular flavor and they don't like it, or it's too vinegary, or they don't like the fermentation. But I don't think they should write off kombucha altogether. I think it's worth giving different flavors and different brands a try, because they might find one that they like. And I just feel like it's got so many great properties and so many things you can do with it. You can use it in cocktails. You can drink it plain, for different health things that are happening. And certainly, like I said, balancing that gut health. I think it's got so many positives that I think it's worth finding one that you like.
Mm-hmm. And then, if you don't like that one flavor, try a different one, right?
That's right. Yeah. Some people like the sweeter flavor. Some people like the more, there's this whole flavor profile of, the types of people. Some people really like that very vinegary, I think they call it like anarchist kombucha,
yeah.
right? And then you've got kind of like the middle group that's a
hardcore,
particular like pH and particular like sweetness level to it. And then some people like the really sweet ones. And so I think you just find one that you like.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll kind of leave this to some of the local shout outs. I know you got a ton of businesses that you're in. Why don't you, shout out whatever local spots that you like too? Cause I also like giving any of that stuff. And, that way we can kind of highlight some local businesses. And then plus, of course, we can always highlight, where your stuff is at. But
sure. So we are on tap, Hop and Vine in San Jose, State Street Market in Los Altos, Bad Animal in Santa Cruz, Poke House Santa Cruz, Cafe Ugly Mug in Santa Cruz. We are at Seaside Brewery in Seaside, Perfectly Pressed in Monterey. So if you go to our website, we're adding commercial accounts all the time. So if you go to our website and our Instagram page, you can see where we are available on tap. We're also doing deliveries, and then we're working on some growler refill stations as well. So if you're somebody that likes to fill up those growlers, you can just go into a commercial location if we're not available at a market.
Yeah, and then I noticed you were talking about some community charities. Which one is the one you like giving back to?
So there's Common Roots Farm in Santa Cruz. We donate a percentage of our sales throughout the whole year. I do that on a quarterly basis, and then different campaigns throughout the year that we do. So you can check it out at Common Roots in Santa Cruz. So that's our primary, charity or nonprofit that we focus on. We did that in 2022, and we will do that same one in 2023.
Awesome. And then, I kind of leave it to you. We kind of already know the gear. I'll be taking some pictures of the gear. We've got some of your favorite spots. Are there any favorite businesses, like restaurants or anything that you like? I always like to kind of get those out too. That's something that I get opinion from everybody.
Yeah, so my kids love a couple of places right here in downtown Mountain View. So there's several restaurants down here to check out. For me, I'm vegetarian, so I'm always looking for those vegetarian spots. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I love Akira Sushi in Santa Cruz. They've got 2 locations, and they've got sort of all kinds of sushi.
That's awesome.
One of the things that I like is there's over 20 or 25 vegetarian sushis. So not, just like cucumbers or avocados. Like they've got these really cool combinations. Like I haven't seen anything like that before. So I love that one. Julia's down in Pacific Grove is a great vegetarian restaurant. Chef Anthony, he's also a mushroom forager, a mushroom hunter. So he uses mushrooms in almost all of his dishes. And he actually takes classes out. We've done his mushroom hunting class before. So you can go out and learn how to identify mushrooms.
Oh, that sounds like fun. I might want to do that. Okay, and then we're getting close to closing it out. I'll let you give any advice. The floor is yours. You can give any other information that you want to do, and it's all yours.
Yeah, like I said, I think if there's a business or a business venture, something that you're thinking about, and like for me, it just sort of came up in the back of my mind, and I couldn't shake it. And I think if I didn't at least go try it, even if it meant I went into a commercial kitchen and just did that, and like it never really went anywhere. I feel like that would have been an interesting and sort of like learning adventure. But then, so I think if there's something that you want to go do, I say go do it. It may not be exactly what you were envisioning, or maybe it will be, or maybe it'll even be bigger than what you pictured. But I say go do it and go check it out. And if nothing else, like you'll learn so much. What I have learned about so many things, permitting in the state of California, I have tipped my hat to anybody who has opened a restaurant or has a food truck or has tried to do anything like that, because there's a lot of like hoops that you have to go through in order to make that happen. So if nothing else, you'll learn a lot, and I think it's something that everyone should go try.
Awesome. Yeah, shout out to Guillaume for introducing us, and I know he's been through that process quite a bit, and he's still going through it.
Yeah, Bar Zola, you and I were talking about that earlier. Yep. That's another one, Zola and Bar Zola in Palo Alto. Definitely check that out. I was, definitely expected the food to be amazing no matter what, but just the ambiance and the experience there was super fun.
Awesome. And then, your Instagram is at Cruz Kombucha. And then where are you usually at? Are you usually at the farmers markets?
Yes, farmers markets. And run around doing deliveries. And, you can find me info@cruzkombucha.com, or our website or Instagram account if you have any questions, or any deliveries or any questions, or just any questions about starting a business or a kombucha business.
Awesome. All right. We're all set. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate for you listening. Take care, everybody. We're out. And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support, and thanks for listening.